Before we dive into this week's episode of the Bestseller Experiment, we just want to warn you that this episode contains strong language from the start. So if you're in the car with your kids, you might want to listen to it a bit later on. Let's run the show.
Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we try and discover what makes a best-selling novel while trying to write, publish and market one in just a year. I'm Mark Stay.
And I'm Mark Desvaux, and this week it didn't take us 4 attempts to do that intro at all. And before we get going, we just wanted to say thank you to Scrivener, our amazing sponsors of this entire year journey with the Bestseller Experiment. If you haven't tried Scrivener yet, it is an amazing tool. I cannot live without it. I am on my iPad, on my PC all day long, tapping away on Scrivener. So check it out. You can go to literatureandlatte.com to try your free 30-day trial.
The only thing Scrivener doesn't do is teach you how to spell, does it, Mark?
No, that one I've asked them actually if they could build that feature in. And the next one they're looking at is maybe how they can write for me as well. That'd be pretty impressive.
Yeah. Like proofreading your emails would be a nice feature. Yeah, that'd be great. Subscribe to us if you haven't subscribed already, and join us online. We've been getting some great stuff on Twitter. We're at Bestseller XP on Twitter, and we've had some amazing tweets. Not least, I meant to mention this a couple of weeks ago, Mark, but you remember you were asking for a Miss Whiplash to keep you in line.
I
with
was.
your writing.
And I was very disappointed that I no one's actually showed up yet in my writing studio.
You've had an offer.
What?
At Venus_Bloom.
Oh my!
Who writes erotic novels?
Oh my goodness!
She's offered. So drop her a line. I would imagine you probably need to read a few of her books first just to get the gist of it. But she's coming with an offer.
Venus, expect a tweet from me soon. I have to be really careful what I say on these podcasts, don't I?
You
kind of forget.
Yeah.
We relax into this and we forget we're actually going out to millions of people around the world. At least that's what Nielsen told us the other day. Right?
We've had some. We did ask people where they listened to us, and Pernilla, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Pernilla Hughes said that we got her through a mountain of ironing. So I always listen to podcasts when I'm ironing as well. So that's good to hear. We also had a tweet from a character. Now that's a first for me. Let me see if I can find it. Basically, it was a character saying, "My author is glad that he didn't give up on me." Basically,
that's brilliant. Whilst Mark's looking for that, we also wanted to thank the Washington Post for writing an article which talked about the podcast, which blew us away just before Christmas, and then the Independent this week also did that. So thank you so much to all these incredible journalists who are obviously checking in with the show, and we really appreciate all of the tweets and the write-ups. Did you find that tweet, Mark?
Yeah, it's at Jonathan Frieden. My author, very grateful for your advice about not giving up. Confidence alert averted. Thank you. And that's interesting because it's something that publishers talk about. They always think it's an interesting idea to have a character as a Twitter avatar.
Well, I've heard of people setting up websites for their characters, like fake website and things like that. So it's an interesting idea. Definitely. Yeah. Love it.
And we also had a tweet from Harriet Tice, who told us that she's been listening to us. Your old school friend. Oh, well,
this might be an opportune moment to introduce our guest, Mark.
Our guest, yes, who's whispering in my ear.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Harriet Tice. She's just got an agent.
She's got my agent, and not anything to do with me.
Fantastic.
She said, "Oh my gosh, your agent has just offered to represent me," and so yeah, she's fabulous. She's an ex-barrister.
And who am I talking to?
Sarah. Sorry.
Let's introduce our special guest of the week is Shari Lepena, the one and only Shari Lepena, who knew nothing of this podcast because she took a month off social media in October and completely missed our launch. But she's here with us now. We're absolutely delighted to have her. How are you, Sarah?
I'm very good, thank you. And hiya.
And
so Harriet and I went to school together in Edinburgh.
Wow.
We were both prefects, in fact. Hard to believe in my case. I did bribe the voters. She was not voted. I think she was given one by the teachers. And she's doing crime writing now.
Yeah.
And so I think she's got a very promising career ahead of her.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's fantastic.
Sorry, it's just when you said Harriet Tice, I was like, hang on, there can't be that. I mean, unless it's a different Harriet Tice, in which case she can sod off. What we're interested in is my friend Harriet Tice.
Well, let's introduce Sarah, shall we? Sarah, you're an award-winning author. You've written in YA and adult. You've written in all kinds of genres. You've written for the BBC as well. You've done some TV. You've got all sorts of stuff in development. Is it 30 Minutes is in development with Netflix, among other things?
Josh Schwartz and Michael DeLuca.
Fantastic.
Can I just say massive congratulations, because I think that's the new holy grail for authors, isn't it? Get a series on there.
Do you know, it's really hard to get into Netflix, but I have this amazing. This is like the. Am I allowed to just little rude words on here?
Oh, you can be as rude as
you
you
anyway.
like.
Okay,
we'll put
cool.
a little E on the thing.
Okay, thank you.
And it makes Mark squeamish.
I was only
as
going
well.
to say wanker. I was just going to say wanker. This is the most wankery thing you can possibly say. In fact, if there was ever an award for wankery stories, this story would get the Gold Wanker Award. So I was in. So there's so many ticks for wankerdom in this story, but I was in LA, one tick, last February, just before the Oscars, second tick. And so I went to Chateau Marmont, big double tick,
big tick, yeah.
with Irving Welsh, triple tick, for dinner the night before the Oscars. I met Lady Gaga. That was quite interesting. But while I was at this dinner, he said to me, you really need to meet my manager because you two are both very driven. You've both got the same work sensibility. And I was a bit like, I don't think I need a manager. But, you know, like I'm not going to say no. Out of politeness, I'm going to have this breakfast. So I met this guy. And I mean, my manager is lovely and he's a proper geek. Underneath the LA charm, I sense geek. I smell geek there, you know? But he's also an exceptionally good looking man. So we had arranged to meet for breakfast. And so we met up and I was starving and I had a minor hangover. And I really wanted a proper breakfast. But as he walked in, I thought I cannot order breakfast because it's all going to go wrong. I'm going to spill it down myself. So I just sat there. I sat there and starved and pretended to be an LA woman going, oh, no, I couldn't possibly eat any food at all today. But so he was great. And he spoke to my screen agent here and they all got on. And we ended up in a 5-way auction for the rights for a book that isn't even out in America yet. And to be honest, wasn't in paperback in the UK at that point. Wow. So it hadn't even, like now it's sold well. I mean, I think the new cover, the new look has done really well for the paperback. But it hadn't really sold. And he got us, it came down to Paramount, I think it was, or DreamWorks and Netflix were the last two in. And then Netflix went. And we've got Josh Schwartz who did the OC, Gossip Girl, the creator of that. He's adapting it.
So how does that work practically? Are they kind of phoning you up every 20 minutes saying, now it's Paramount, now it's DreamWorks?
No, what happened practically, and I think this sums up the experience of many an author, is that there was a lot of emails going around, and then there was this very long gap where I wasn't getting any emails. And so I messaged Trevor and I was like, so what's happening? The last I heard, we were in this, auction. And he said, what do you mean what's happening? Haven't you seen the emails? And I was like, what emails? And of all the people talking about the option of my book, I had been left off the email round robin. And I thought, this is the vision of the future to come,
People wonder why writers are paranoid.
But I kind of thought it was funny. And I was like, you know what? Right at this moment, I am the most important person in this email conversation. 2 months' time, I don't matter. Yeah. But right now, so it was quite funny. But no, it was that bonkers thing of so-and-so's come in, and of course, it's Hollywood. The minute someone has a sniff of something, everyone is interested. But, it was down to Trevor. He packaged it. He got it together. And so I have an LA team called Trevor and Dave. You couldn't get a less LA sounding.
It's
so
like
my entertainment lawyer. I know.
Writing,
my entertainment lawyer is called Dave, and he is amazing. He is, him and Netflix, they've both got blood. They're both bloodied with that contract.
Right.
We gave some, they gave some. But yeah, Dave is awesome and Trevor is awesome. And so I've got a really good, it sounds awful, but I've got a great team.
That's great.
That's an amazing story, Sarah, but I've got to say it was completely spoilt by the fact I have this image of a Golden Phallus Award in my head throughout that.
I know, but I'm wearing it. I should have it like a big metal chain, like a Harvey Weinstein style.
Could be the new Beastie
chain.
Boy kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know the backstory to this, because how do you end up having that kind of breakfast meeting? Like, what were you doing, say, 5, 10 years ago? And is this your wildest dream kind of fantasy that's happening right now?
Do you know, it's an odd one, isn't it? Because there have been moments when you're working on something or you're doing some screenwriting. I mean, Mark knows this as well. And it can be a real pain in the arse. And then you have to tell yourself, look, you of 10 years ago that was teaching and writing and hoping for a Glance deal or a HarperCollins deal or a film deal or a TV episode, you know, that you would be staying up till 5 o'clock in the morning or working through the night. Whereas I'm like, oh, I've got to do notes on this script, you know. But I think the tragedy is, I had this conversation a few years ago with someone I know, a film director, Johannes Roberts, and we talked about driven people. And the sad thing is, driven people are never happy. You know, like the biggest realization is that you're never going to be happy. So I've kind of made peace with myself that I'm never going to be happy, but I'm trying to just enjoy the storytelling, and everything else is out of my control. You know, like whether a book is successful is not down to me. Whether a book is successful is down to whether the publisher has put the money behind it. That's all that counts. I tweet about my books because that's me doing my bit. No one fucking pays any attention about the author tweeting about their book. They pay attention if the Evening Standard tweets about your book, or the Telegraph tweets, or someone else tweets about your book, you know, so it's about placement and whatever. But the only thing I can do is write the stories I want to write. And if people want to buy those, then I've just realized that nothing else makes me happy. I've had a great year and I'm still a miserable fucker.
Do you know, I'll tell you what it is. I've got a theory as a coach. I see this all the time.
Mark said you were. I need you to make me a happy, fluffy person.
Well, I've got a theory. I call it normalization. And it's the idea that no matter where we get to in life, no matter whether we're in the slums or the mansion on the hills, we normalize everything.
Yeah.
So you're now in the normalizing of the massively successful author stage of your career.
Not quite. I'd really like to be that. Let's hope in a few months' time. But I would really love to be at that stage. I'd really love to be the irritating person that everyone else is like, just tell us it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't want to hear your problem.
That's what we want to know, you see, because we're on this journey. And now, you mentioned, you dropped in there about something that's about to happen. And I think it's a prime opportunity to mention an incredible story behind your forthcoming novel, Behind Her Eyes. Give us a story, because there is a massive, from what I've heard, from what I'm picking up, there is a massive buzz about this book that's coming out in a few weeks.
We have got a good buzz. We have got some good buzz going on. And we've sold it 21 countries now. And, you know, it's coming out big in America, I think. And it's a lot of stuff happening over here. It's, you know, we've got all the supermarkets and that kind of thing. But I was quite lucky in some regards. And in others, I think it is testament to putting the time in with networking. You know, I think you can be talented, but if you stay at home in the Outer Hebrides and never go to an event and never go to a convention, you don't get face-to-face with a lot of editors. And especially if you're working within genre, you know, it's quite a small pool. It's quite hard to break out. You know, crime I consider a genre. It's not mainstream sort of literature. Crime is a bigger genre than, you know, as we know, it's like horror, fantasy. It's hard to have a big, you know, your Joe Abercrombie's are few and far between. Yeah. But so she came to me and said that she wanted to publish me, the editor at HarperCollins. And I said, that's great, but I owe some books and I don't have any ideas. And she said, well, just pitch me something that I can take to acquisitions in like 2 weeks' time. She goes, it doesn't have to be brilliant, which anyone knows means it has to be brilliant. And then over the course of that week, it was an awful week. It was, I'm laughing, but only, you know, in the context of our conversation, but it was an awful week. I was looking after my friend's dog who I had to have put down. And then the wonderful Graham Joyce died that week. God. So I was in a real state, and I was walking up and down Chiswick High Road looking for a cafe to try and figure out some idea for this book. And I had this idea of a couple, an affair, and secrets, as all these thrillers do. And I just said, this isn't enough. And so I went to a pub and I had a glass of wine, and I thought, I've just killed my career before it started because I've had this great opportunity and I've got nothing. And then I literally, as I opened my notebook, got the ending. And it's there's been a lot of fuss online about the ending.
Well, there's the hashtag
the what the
WTF
fuck, that ending.
Yeah.
which I was a bit worried about because I thought they're setting me up to fail. But thus far, it seems to be working okay. And so I had the ending and I thought, oh, you know what? This is something special. And that's arrogant and that's very American of me. Americans are much better at being positive about their own things than English people. But I did have that moment of, oh, yeah, this
That
works.
happened straight as you came up with the ending. You knew then it was going to be different.
Yeah. I knew then it was special. It was, I was like, oh, this is clever. That's awfully arrogant.
I mean, the question I would ask as well is, because you've written in genre, you've written bits of fantasy, you've written erotic fairy tales, you've written YA stuff. There's always been a kind of a thriller element in them, but this is a proper put it next to Harlan Coben on the shelf thriller, isn't it? Was that a strategic?
It isn't. I mean, John Connolly said to me in Dublin, he was like, it's going to be very interesting to see how straight crime readers take to this book. It's going to be Marmite. There will be some people that are like, this does not fit a thriller.
Right.
But to me, it's a thriller. But it's not. It has Pinborough-esque elements to it.
Good. Still got your voice.
Yeah. I mean, I wanted to do a domestic thriller that it's hard to say these things without sounding like you're disparaging a whole genre, which I'm not because I love domestic thrillers. I read them all the time. But they do fit a very conformative, that's not even a word, but it is now.
It is now.
They conform to various rules, and I wanted to break a couple of those rules, and I'm hoping that it has, and I'm hoping people like it. But I think it plays to the beats of a thriller.
Right.
But it has added Pinborough.
Excellent.
I like to play around with different genres. I like to play around.
Talking about the buzz and everything, because it has been
bonkers,
incredible.
I've got eczema with it. It's bringing me out
pre-publication? Oh gosh. Okay. I mean, how much were you involved in the strategy of that? Did you sit down and have meetings with them and talk about how it's going to evolve?
It was fucking awesome. I've said to people, and again, I'm going for the Wanker of the Year award. I was having my interview with the Evening Standard this morning. And I said to her, and I've said it to a few people actually, I'm very glad this wasn't my first book. Because if I had been given the expectation that this is what happened with every book, you could be in for some serious downfall if it didn't quite work, Whereas because I've had 20 odd books before this, I know that you can be in the coal mines for a lot of it. So, no, it's been amazing. I mean, before Christmas so my agent in New York has already been into Flatiron and had a presentation there about everything they're doing. And they flew me over to Savannah and they're flying me for a 2.5-week tour of America. Some bit, not all of it, obviously, but there's like a plane a day for 2.5 weeks, and I don't like flying, so that's going to be fun. But yeah, over here they brought us in for like a big marketing presentation, and it's been amazing. We had a big dinner with various buyers, and it's just been a whole different experience.
Yeah, it's the red carpet treatment, isn't it?
It is, and I'm kind of still expecting someone to yank it because you know how easily I fall over. And I'm kind of expecting it to happen with my book, So I said to Natasha tonight, I just want it to come out. And she said, aren't you enjoying it? I said, it's been a long run up, and I'm just kind of, and I don't do envy of other authors because I think there's enough space for everyone to succeed. And people don't buy one book, Exactly, So if they go into Asda and there are books for £5, you're going to not buy just one. You might buy one week, one another week. So, I think we can be generous with each other because it's a tough enough job without that. But I am kind of like, I feel like I've put the digging in.
Does it feel like you're kind of really heavily pregnant right now, and it's like those latter stages?
Thankfully, I have never experienced that. I don't think it's natural. My vagina was not designed to give birth. There's nothing normal about it. I'm not going to push a baby out of a hole I once found it hard to put a Tampax into. I'm sorry, no. It's not going to happen.
I'm putting that in the vault of gold.
I said that during I had to do this talk in Savannah to all these Southern booksellers, and it was supposed to be quite a serious talk about my book. And I'm like, I've got dodgy back. And so I was really nervous, and so my back had gone. And everyone else is talking seriously about their books, but I was like, shit, my book is about an affair and I'm in the South and I'm not quite sure how I can make my character sympathetic. So I was quite nervous, but I had this very serious talk planned. And so when my publisher, she was introducing me to, there was like a room full of like 150 Southern bookshop owners. And Amy, who's the head of Flatiron, she was like, and Joe Hill said this about the book, and Harlan Coben said this, and John Connolly said this. And so she goes through this list of men who've said stuff about my book, and she went, so here is Sarah Pinborough. So I hobble, to the microphone, and I found myself, what I'm like, I found myself saying, do you know what? Those quotes cost me so many sexual favors I can hardly walk. and they just lost it. So I thought, okay, these are my people. And so I did say at one point, I don't know how it came into it, but that Tampax line did come into it. So I've now stashed it for use.
That's quite a risk. They could have gone springtime for Hitler.
But I did think I would know at that moment, whether I had to be disparaging of people who had affairs or I could just be like, but at the end of it, this woman came up and she must have been about 90 and her husband was about 95. And she said to me, oh, I was the other woman. I made him leave his wife. And I was like, okay. But she still stalks his ex-wife on Facebook. No. I thought nothing changes. Nothing changes, however old you get.
Crikey. Shall we talk about your craft for a bit?
I have one?
Yeah. Well, you're clearly doing something right. First of all, do you write every day?
No, I think that's bollocks. I think it's really... I think it's really bollocks advice. I think it pressurizes people to tell bad stories. Okay. I used to think it was important, and I used to really buy into that 2,000 words a day, blah, 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 blah. And I used to get caught up in other people's word counts, and I would find myself, when I first joined Twitter, before I realized it just made people want to punch you in your face, I would be like, I've done 2,000 words, now I'm going to the gym. I was that person. Clearly not now. But no, I think the most important thing in writing is the thinking time. So it's not about whether you're writing every day, it's whether you're thinking about your story every day. Right. So for me, the minute I stop worrying, and people always say I'm prolific, and I am quite fast because I don't have children, etc. I think, which makes a difference. But I think it's far more important to take some time and think about how best to tell your story than to be thinking, I've got to write 90,000 words in 3 months. Now, I appreciate, because I have been there, that for some people, they have to hit those word counts because they've got to get the book in at this time to write the next, if they're writing 3 or 4 books a year to make their wages, to be honest, my suggestion would be get a proper job and write one really fucking good book. Because I think we've all wasted time churning out books that we haven't given enough thought to. Right. So I do think, to get your plotting right takes thinking. So no, don't write every day, but certainly think every day.
Cool.
That's really fascinating, actually. It's interesting, Mark, isn't it? Because we've been spending a lot of time plotting in our book, and I don't feel so bad hearing that now. Thanks for that.
It's absolutely vital. It's absolutely vital. I think, you can waste a lot of time. But also, I'm not a redrafter very often.
Right.
I don't do a lot of drafting.
So you outline a lot beforehand? Yeah,
I'm a massive planner. I outline, I've got notebooks with and it's not like I don't have the whole book planned out because that would be mental, but I have definitely the ending in sight. Yeah. I know roughly what everyone's arc is going to be. I might change bits, but I kind of plan in quite detail. Then I rough write in Scrivener, actually.
Hey! I was about to say. We didn't even pay you to say that, did we?
I know. I don't use it in the way that most people do, but I use it as, I'll use it for planning, and I'll have little lists in it. So I use and little when I was doing Mayhem and Murder, I would put articles from the old Times articles. Right. I would log them. So this murder had these articles, so I'd have it like a clipboard rather than, I don't write in it, but I use it as a notebook almost. Okay, so I have a notebook, which I then transcribe to the notebook on Scrivener, and then I write in neat.
Cool. Good use.
Yeah. So I'm a massive planner, but then I hand in pretty much draft one.
So what's the split? What's the split between the time you spend planning and the time you actually spend writing?
Oh God, I can knock out a couple of thousand words in an hour if I'm pushed, if I know what I'm writing, but my planning time is much, much bigger. I mean, I'm always planning. I've normally got more than one thing on the go. So I've got, at the moment, I'm writing a short story for Christopher Golden in America. It was a 5,000 word limit, and mine's going to be like 20,000 words. So, but I'm using it as a treatment for a film. So I'm going to write it as a movie. It was a movie idea, and I thought, actually, I owe this short story. I might as well write it out. And if he's prepared to take 20,000 words, which thankfully Del Ray over there were, and I think they're going to try and shenanigan me a bit of extra cash.
Do you wake up in the morning, Sarah, with like massively fully formed ideas that you seem to have subconsciously developed through your sleep?
No. My biggest bugbear? It's because I find writing completely. I sometimes find writers very pretentious, especially on social media. I think it's given people, this voice to be pretentious. And actually, none of us are saving lives. Do you know what I mean? We're making shit up. It's not a big deal. At the end of the day, when the apocalypse comes, they're not going to be saying, "Oh, save those people who make shit up." They're going to be like, "Where are the brain surgeons and the electricians and the plumbers? These are the people we need." So I do find writers on social media can be very pretentious. And I just think, no, I don't let characters run away with my character's telling the story. No, they're not. You're telling the story. And if your character is running away with you, rein it in, so I get very, to me, it's just a puzzle. You're putting a puzzle together. So even when I wrote The Death House, people were like, "Oh, did you cry at the end of it?" I'm like, "No, of course I fucking didn't. I knew what was going to happen. I made it up." It's not,
It does seem to be a contest to be the most sued out there,
Yeah, and I think there are things that I'm very grateful for, one of which is self-publishing wasn't an option when I started out, because as much as I like to think I wouldn't have, and I know that it's been very successful for some people, but unless you have a history in publishing or have some publishing credit to your name and you understand how the business works, I see people who just literally write a novel and put it on Smashwords. And some of them are actually half decent writers. But, there's loads of exclamation marks on page one. There's things that you just think a decent editor would deal with this.
We are hearing, our third guest, Shannon Mayer, self-published, and she did everything right. She studied the industry.
That's the thing. If you've got that capability.
She got an editor.
Yeah.
She does it right. She doesn't just splurt something onto Word and then bung it onto Kindle.
If you treat it like a business. I treat writing like a business, but I am very English. I retweet things on Twitter like everybody does, but I'm very English in that being very positive about your work thing. Like if someone says, "Oh, you write books," I go, "Yeah." Nah, read theirs. They're better than me. That English way of doing things rather than Americans. I chaired a panel for Deborah Harkness and V.E. Schwab, who are both very lovely women. And so I read their books and I prepared it quite well. And it was really interesting to watch them talk about their books with such passion and such love. Whereas English people were just like,
"I wrote a book. Will you please read it?
I've done a book. His book's better than my book. Don't read my book." Because you kind of you don't want to sound like you're bigging yourself up, do you? Yeah. So I think there's you have to be able to do that if you're going to self-publish.
So I'm curious. You mentioned about editors earlier. What kind of editor did you find works best with you?
Well, you don't ever find the perfect editor. They pay money, but Natasha's a friend of mine already, and I like working with Gillian. I've had some good editors. Joe Fletcher was a good editor, but you have to treat it like a product. So my thing is when you get editorial notes, you open the email and you read them. And then you get up and walk around the room and you swear a bit. And you get a glass of wine and you say, "They just don't understand my work. I can't possibly cut." Oh, maybe that is a good point, Yeah. And often it just takes a bit of space. And I think it's really hard to say. What I was very lucky with Behind Her Eyes, and this was what was genius actually, was we had this ridiculous auction in America. So I was at FantasyCon actually last year or the year before, and the New York sub agent had been saying, "I'm not sure we're going to sell this in America. It's got a lot of drinking and smoking, and but thankfully, thank you, girl on a train, But
yeah.
And then she emailed me at FantasyCon. She said, "Oh, would you be around to take some phone calls next week?" So I was like, yeah. But I thought this was for me to try and make them want my book. So then I say to her, "Right, what do I have to say? I'm really worried. How am I going to sell this book?" She went, No. These are people who want, they've already got money on the table. These are people who want your book. And I was like, oh, okay. So I had like 8 or 9 telephone conversations with big editors in New York who were, as we were speaking, bidding for my book. But what was wonderful was with each one, I was like, because, Americans like, oh my God, I love your book. Oh my God, your book's amazing. And so I was like, yeah, but what would be your notes on my book? What thoughts have you got? So each one of these very top editors in New York were like, well, I think that this detail would have worked. I'm like, so I'd write it all down and then take the best bits from. So I had all these people, and then I had conversations with loads of movie studios, and I took all those notes. So when it came to actually doing the edit for Natasha and Christine, we did a joint edit for America and London at the same time. I was saying, what do you think about this? They're like, those are such good thoughts. I was like, I know. I don't know where they came from.
That is genius.
So I literally took all the notes from all these other people. I had to put no effort into my edit whatsoever. I had all the best thoughts from the best editors in America.
That's probably not a tip that our listeners can use, but maybe file away for future use.
But I would also say, if you're going to give a tip, is, editors are... A good copy editor is gold dust. And a good editor should give you a couple of things that really punch you in the gut, but will invariably make your book better. I mean, even with 13 minutes, over here we publish that very much as a crossover adult YA, but in America they're publishing it very YA. They made me cut 50 pages from the first 200.
Wow.
Whoa.
And I did it, and actually I was like, you know what, that really works. As a YA, as a non-crossover YA, straight YA, I think the American version is better.
Wow. Okay.
I haven't read it yet, but it's it's faster, which I think for YA is.
Yeah.
Whereas when I started doing it with Gillian, we were very much aiming at a crossover market, so it was a different approach. But
wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's really 2 quite distinct versions of the book out there.
Yeah, I'm calling the UK one the director's cut. And if you love this, you can have more of it if you buy it from Book Depository. Yeah. I always want to call Book Depository Books Depository.
You're not the only one, don't worry. They're well aware of it.
I did a speech to the whole wives of KPMG about literacy the other day, and we hadn't even had wine. And I meant to say, I'm in my 40s, I can cry at an Andrex advert. And I said, I'm in my 40s, I can cry at a Durex advert. And then I compounded it by stopping and going, no, I didn't mean Durex. The other thing, the fluffy thing. What did I mean? Dulux. That's what I meant. Dulux. Puppies. Whatever the one has the puppies in. But no. And all the very, very wealthy, successful wives of KPMG quite enjoyed that.
Good.
So it taught me something about rich women.
Well, let's talk about women for a minute.
Okay.
Because the thing that's kind of the book that we're writing,
yes,
we're keeping very stum about what it's about, but we have let slip over the last few episodes that our protagonist is a woman. Oh. And of course, when men start writing
about women,
female,
oh my God,
there are the traps that we're aware of. She won't be admiring herself, her naked body in the mirror at any point. That's the basic one.
Don't have her having like some big emotional trauma and then going down to the B&B breakfast for a big hearty full English. Right. Because I read that once, and it was a male writer who was a friend of mine, and it was a great book, but it was a real, like, for me, I was like, this is a man writing a woman, because no woman gets up in the morning and thinks, well, my child is missing, but I'm going to have some sausage, eggs, and beans, and everything's going to be right in the world. Whereas a man will be like, you know what, I'm still going to have my breakfast.
I can only work on a full English.
I'm having a breakfast.
I've paid for breakfast. I might as well have it.
It's in the room, Bill. Yeah, so no, don't have
That's
that.
chapter 3 then we have to scrub mark.
Yeah, scrap that.
Actually, we had the curry house, not the full breakfast, but yeah, it's gone.
Curry house, yeah, that has to go. She's going to eat sushi.
What are the other things that might make you wince?
What, man writing a woman? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. The thing is, there's not that many differences. It's all surface differences. I think just being a little bit too soft. I think as long as you don't make her too soppy or that kind of, she's gutsy.
No.
I hate that gutsy
Well, that's the thing.
thing.
You hear that thing, she has to be a strong woman.
Yeah.
But I think a complex woman might be more
Complex
interesting.
is better. And I think we're all complex. I don't think there are strong men. I think there are strong women. There are people that are good at things. And, I think it's, as long as she's interesting.
Yeah.
Without using the word quirky.
I'm going to throw something out there, Sarah. You've got such an incredible view on all this. Would you be willing, for a laugh, when it's ready, to have a read through just our basic synopsis and rip it to bits?
Yeah,
awesome.
Especially the women bit.
I'm learning your tip about going to the best in the industry and getting their best advice, right?
Stop it, I love it.
I work quickly.
Mark, I feel like my wine glass needs, like, my wine pint glass.
Hang on one.
There
we go. Hang on. There you go.
This would be awesome.
This was Sarah's rider. Was a bottle of
Sauvignon
Sauvignon Blanc.
I meant a one glass bottle.
Is that in the budget, Mark?
And he's
gone
cheap. This is like a posh one.
Well, I asked my wife what the good one might be. So
you're going to take this home to your missus?
Well, yeah, okay. Right. If there's any left.
I would be joining you, Sarah, but it's 8 hours earlier here in Canada, so it might be a disastrous day ahead for me. Even more disastrous than normal. But
well, I hate flying, and I've got to do this 2.5 weeks American tour, which is a plane a day. And normally my way of dealing with that is to have a drink at the airport, and I was like, I can't. 9 o'clock in the morning every day.
Just be one long crawl, wouldn't it?
It would I'd just be a wreck. So I'm going to have to just man up. Woman up. 7 up. Whatever.
Yes, whatever. Yeah. I can't say man up anymore.
No, I got told off for that.
So tell us about this. Tell us about the kind of life of someone who's about to promote a book that's had a huge amount of buzz, could go straight to the bestseller, top of the bestseller charts, possibly in both sides of the continent.
Down.
Well, let's think positively.
The advanced reviews on Amazon are great.
Have you seen Goodreads? 202 reviews.
Nice, very good.
It's all good.
Very good.
Yeah, there's a couple of dodgy ones on Amazon, but I think they're the more my crowd.
Yeah.
People who were looking for something that didn't arrive.
Yeah.
I mean, do you know what? I read somewhere, and I think it was Paula Hawkins, and she said it's very different when it's you. And obviously, I'm not in anywhere near Paula Hawkins' level, but it is that I thought I would be more excited, and I'm actually more nervous.
Right.
But I'm obviously my friend Emma, who works for Argos, which has just been bought by Sainsbury's, and so she's quite high up in that ranking. So our plan is, on the week of publication, we're going to get a little bottle of bubbly, and she's going to drive me around all the supermarkets in Milton Keynes, and I'm going to stand next to my book in the chart with a glass of champagne, taking pictures. Because if it never happens again,
enjoy it. Enjoy the moment.
I'm going to have that. And to be honest, whatever happens, this book has already made me more money than I've ever made. If I put my entire career before this book together, this book has made me more money. So
the other thing is, if it is a huge hit,
I'm going to be unbearable. It's going to be wonderful.
They're going to want another one, though.
Well, I've halfway written the next one.
Oh, good.
And it was really interesting. I went out for a drink with Will Hill and Tom Pollock, who are both genre authors. Yeah. And we were in some divey bar, the Phoenix bar, actually.
Oh, the Phoenix, yeah.
And I was starting this book, and I was like, I don't know, I'm really worried, because there's the ending of Behind Her Eyes, everyone is. And I think it was Tom, actually, and he said, don't try and out-twist yourself. That way lies M. Night Shyamalan. And I was like, you know what, I love his films, but I get your point. Yeah. So I think it's in a lot of ways a better book than Behind Her Eyes, and it has a twist. It doesn't have it's more complex. It doesn't have the sort of straight line to the twist that once you've read Behind Her Eyes once, if you read it again, you see it. Yeah. Which is I think it should always be the case with the twist. You should be able to see it once you know it's there. Because I don't like to cheat. But but it's still female centric. I'm much more interested in women now that I'm getting older than I ever was when I was younger.
Why is that, do you think?
I think when you're young, especially for a woman of my age, I don't know how it is for people in their 20s now, but when I was in my 20s, it was very much kind of like if someone said you were one of the boys, that was a real compliment. Like it was very much about keeping up with the men. And I didn't want children. I didn't particularly want to get married. I mean, I did, but that was a brief mistake in Vegas. I'm not interested in shoes or bags or clothes. I just wanted to be successful. This was always been my drive. Which is very much considered in those days a male trait. And I think women we're judgmental of each other, which I'm a feminist, but I think to be a feminist, you have to acknowledge women are very judgmental of each other. And actually, if we stop doing that, we'd all get on better. But it takes being in your 40s to see that because you're out of that competitive. You're not going to be the hottest girl in the room in your 40s. You are in your 20s. So once you're out of that phase, you can look and think, flipping heck. So I will always try and support, like Catriona Ward, for example.
Yeah.
Brilliant debut novel.
Yeah.
And if I have to choose a debut male author or a debut female author to support, I will always choose the female author to support. Because I also think, you know, women have a tough enough time trying to do everything. And they invariably do end up being the ones who have to do everything. If they get married, they end up doing the house, the babies, you know. I've got friends of mine who work full time and have families, and I can see them like, just come round and let's have some wine. Because it's, you know, it's a lot to deal with. And the men just breeze through it because that's they think they're doing it.
That's been my experience, yeah.
How is it, Mark? Yeah, are you going to go home and maybe just pop one little plate in the dishwasher and have a sit down?
I'm helping out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's official, I helped.
But men do the thing if they put the dishes on top of the dishwasher. That's a man trait. And you just look at them and think, really? Really? You've stacked them on top of the dishwasher? You could just put them in the fucking thing?
Don't ever meet my wife.
I think she and I would get on.
Brian Cranston said his one kind of skill that he brings to the household is he's a master dishwasher stacker. So he's like this evolved male.
I would forgive him. He could just stack dishes on my dishwasher anytime.
We're sounding like Blind Date now. That's brilliant.
That was it. That was my cheesy moment.
So what would be, if you had to, through your whole experience, this incredible journey that you've been on, Sarah, what would be, if you could pick one major tip that you would give to, say, an aspiring author who was maybe in your position 5-10 years ago, what would it be? What's the biggie that you'd pass on in your wisdom?
It's a really boring thing, but I just think be charming, be nice. Don't, you know, you see people get really, especially on Facebook, probably more than Twitter, because they think it's a closed net. And you see people get very bitter and very snooty about writing or success, or if someone's been successful, they obviously can't be a very good writer, and all this kind of boring bullshit that's been going on for years. I think it's a tough enough choice for a career without us all backbiting. Yeah. And so I think if I would always try and help someone, if someone needs an agent, I will intro them to an agent or intro them to an editor, because I don't think, even if they went on to sell millions and millions of copies, that doesn't affect me as a writer. That doesn't affect my journey as a writer, because my book could sell millions and millions of copies and someone else, you know, or not. That might just not have been the book. So I just think don't, if you compare yourself, I said it to Harriet Tice, in fact, a while back. I said, when you get into this business, don't compare yourself to others, because that way lies madness, because there will always be someone doing better. But there will always be a million people who want to be in your position, you know? So you can only, and in some ways I think social media is bad for writers, because you're constantly looking and everyone else's life looks brilliant. Yeah. And actually most people's lives are pretty mundane and ordinary. And if we stopped showing our highlights, you know, we would see that. But I'm not a great one for showing miserable things on social media. I don't think it's fair on other people. But yeah, I think just concentrate on your own journey, but don't be bitter about anybody else's. Be my advice. So it's not even writing advice; it's more just career.
No, I think that's really good advice. I think you're absolutely right. I think being happy for other people's successes is the sign of a stable mind.
And at least gracious, because actually, if you're gracious, you will come to be happy. You know, if you force yourself to congratulate someone when you don't really feel it, afterwards you will feel a lot better.
Yeah. And part of the reason we even do this podcast is we just love talking to people who have had an incredible journey, incredible success. Because for us, it just
me.
No, but it just totally inspires us. You know, as we go on this journey, and as crazy as it might seem what we're trying to do, to have people like you telling a story and giving us this kind of advice is so inspiring. And the one thing we're getting from everyone who's kind of commenting on Twitter is about how inspiring our guests are. And I think we can be inspired by people's success. I think is the biggie, isn't it?
And I think it's, you know, I think one of the I think if anyone ever tells a newbie writer about this glass ceiling and people pulling up the ladder behind them, you know, I have found that the most supportive people have been the really successful people. You know, I've had so much, like Charlene Harris is a diamond. John Connolly has been so helpful to me. I mean, Stephen King blurbed my book. Neil Gaiman is lovely. You know, I've had so much help from so many hugely successful people. Harlan Coben, so many people are helpful, and and kind and generous with their time. And I actually think the more successful people are, of course, the more generous they are, because they're not scrabbling in the sand. It's not, you don't feel like you're fighting each other. Whereas sometimes it can feel like that when you're on that sort of lower rungs, middle rungs. Yeah. So when people talk about, I think if you're hanging out with writers who are bitter at the early stages of their career, get rid of those people. Those are not the people you want to be hanging around with, because they'll make you look at things wrongly. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. There's kind of toxicity, isn't it?
And also, I guess there's a degree of people paying it forward, because for every multi-selling author out there, they've had those leg ups and helps along the way, I guess.
Some have and some haven't. I think every author starts out hoping their first book, or expect, you kind of have that, you're naive enough to think that your first book published is going to, you're going to see someone reading it on the tube. Yeah, good luck with that, But I think it's very important, for me, I'm very happy that it's worked out this way round. I kind of would have hoped to have been rich in my first book, but I would rather have built towards something succeeding hugely. I mean, I think my career, I've been very lucky in my career in that it's gone steadily improved, but it's not been that meteoric, I mean, even Paula Hawkins, she'd written other books under a different name, so it wasn't, but when you have those people who have a debut book that hits all the marks, and you kind of think, is this what they think publishing is? Yeah. Because Jesus Christ, they're in for a problem, or if people who are led to believe that's going to happen. Whereas at least when you start out in genre, you kind of have a rough idea that's not going to be the case. You're just happy to be seen in Waterstones and whatever. So now I'm like, when they tell me selling figures, I'm like, I don't know, is that good? And they're like, yeah, that's pretty good. I'm like, okay.
Well, we think it's going to be amazing. I think the stars are aligning.
You guys look very sensible people, and so I'm thinking you might be right.
Do you want to hang around, because we have a question of the week, and we've got
yes
as well, haven't we?
We do, yes. Actually, maybe you could sign that once we do the question of the week. So we have a signed copy of
Behind Her Eyes.
Oh, fantastic!
Beautiful hardback, hot off the presses at HarperCollins. Is this your first? Are we stealing your first copy?
Only copy of
oh, Christ, we're really sorry.
But I only got it for you guys. I was like, can I take this book?
Wow! Do you hear that, competition winners? Oh wow, that's
amazing.
So
yeah, and so you better bloody enter just for my ego, if nothing else.
In your horse.
If they have to give me this book back, I'm going to be really unhappy.
So if you want to win Sarah's very first copy of Behind Her Eyes hardback, get yourself over to bestsellerexperiment.com. There is a bar on the top, and there is a win button. Click on that, and you will see the
just say someone enters.
Absolutely. So get along there, and remember that you get more entries when you share the website. So there you go. You can really if you go out there and promote the hell out of Bestseller Experiment, you've got a very good chance of winning the book. So not that we're experimenting with marketing at all.
I see what you're doing here. I see what you're doing.
See where we're coming from there.
I like where you're coming from.
All part of the experiment. That's what we say.
Yeah.
So the question of the week this week actually comes from Noel Walker in Ontario. Thank you so much, Noel, for sending us this question. And it's a really good question. Actually, it's got our head scratching. He's actually asked the question, what exactly is a bestseller? It seems like there are different standards for different newspapers. Are there differences in different countries, such as Canada, US, UK? And when we read this question, we thought, well, we're doing a podcast called The Bestseller Experiment, and we haven't really defined exactly what a bestseller is.
You think we'd know the answer to that, wouldn't you?
You think that would be the premise for the show?
I think it's very different on format as well. I think you can have a bestseller on a hardback with not a huge amount of sales. Yeah.
Do you know much about the kind of bestseller list, like the New York Times, Sunday Times, and how they...
I know that we're aiming at Sunday Times bestseller. They say that. I'm just laughing quietly in the corner going, that's not going to happen. But they're aiming for that. So... I mean, it's interesting because I think sometimes it's not necessarily on purchased copies, is it? I think sometimes it's on what has been bought in rather than what has been actually sold. I think can sometimes happen with hardback. Someone told me this ages ago.
That might be the case in the States, I think.
Oh, is that in the States?
Yeah, because in answer to Noel's question, because this is one of those questions that requires a complex answer, we've got in touch with the good folk at Nielsen in the UK, and they've promised to talk to us.
Excellent stuff. So we often do a little piece on Scrivener as well, and you talked about using Scrivener for something completely different. So when you start with your planning, describe what it like. I'm trying to look at it visually in my head. What does Scrivener look like when you're planning?
Oh, I mean, because I'm really shit at watching tutorials. I'm like, the worst person in the world with a manual. So I know Scrivener does a huge amount of things that I really am never going to use it for. But I use it very much so when I wrote Murder and Mayhem, they were books set around real life crimes in the 19th century. So I went to the Times archive and various newspaper archives and dug out real reports about the policemen involved, because sometimes it was different crimes I would pull out reports for, and these crimes. And so I would stash them. So I'd have years. So I'd have like 1898, 1899, and I'd stash things in, and then I'd use it for character studies. So I'd have like little character bits or different story arcs I would store in Scrivener. But I would just use it I'd use it like a A4 file, like when you were doing your history A level and you'd have like the different color binders. But I know that it can be used for so many more things.
But what's great is you're using it can be used to suit however
things,
you like to work, which is what I think is just one of its kind of powerful things. That's awesome. Mark, just before we finish up, I guess we should mention about where Sarah's wise words will be featured in the Vault of Gold.
Yes, join us on bestseller.com and subscribe to our newsletter, and you will get the Writer's Vault of Gold, which is a free ebook that you can get in EPUB or as a PDF, and it has advice from the likes of our previous guests, Joanne Harris, Joe Abercrombie, John Connolly, Michael Connolly, Bryan Cranston, and now with added Pinborough. So, and we're up to something ridiculous now, like 30,000 words now, I think, and it's all gold. It is the book I wished I'd had when I'd started out writing. It's just full of amazing advice, like write every day.
Which idiot said that?
John Connolly.
I love him. He's like my favourite person in the world, but he's wrong on that one. Think about writing every day. Connolly,
that was my New Year's resolution, Sarah. What am I going to do now?
Yeah,
that was my big New Year's resolution.
He's shorter than me. He will argue that point.
So, sign up, get your copy of that for opinions on both sides of the fence on whether or not you should write every day.
Absolutely.
No, he quoted my new book, so whatever he said is right.
He also said there are no formulas as well, so there you go.
Yeah, he's very good on that.
He covered his ass on that one.
Yeah. You can join us on social media. We're on Facebook at Bestseller Experiment. We're on Twitter at Bestseller XP. And I just want to shout out.
Me?
Yeah, I'm sure we are. If we're not, we will be by the time you get on your train. Okay. I just want to shout out to Josh Atkinson on Twitter, who was tweeting us pretty much every day with his word count and then stopped. Now, Josh, I hope you're either really balls deep in your draft or...
I wasn't quite sure where you were going with that.
Well, I really hope you're still writing away. Josh, get in touch. Let us know how you're getting on. We're also on Pinterest and Instagram as well. And do drop us a line on email via the website, because we did have an amazing email, which I know we've read a lot out already, but we got this from Ali a couple of weeks ago. And Ali says, when I discovered your podcast, I was about 30k into my novel, but hadn't touched it for about 3 months. A divorce and all the resultant emotional and logistical fallouts, as well as drastic developments in some of the political inclinations I was lampooning in the novel, left me lazy and demotivated. Your podcast reinvigorated me and has driven me forward. Despite 2 jobs, striving to be a good and present dad to my children, and a life-threatening health condition, I have now well and firmly made the muse my bitch. I've now passed the 50k mark and am forecasting an end to the first draft by March. Listen, Ali, that's amazing. That was such a great email to get, and we wish you all the best, Ali.
Such a really I know you said about the woman. I know I'm quite flippant as a person, but it's so easy to get bogged down in it. And when you hear someone like that who's doing so many things and still going for it, you think, you know what, man the fuck up.
Yeah, exactly.
To myself, if someone else can do that.
Yeah. So that's amazing. And anyone else out there, let us know how you're getting on. We love hearing about your progress on the books. And join us next time. I mean, how do we top this one?
Again, when I'm really famous.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Please let me be really famous.
And before we let you go, we just wanted to ask, where would be the best place? Obviously, people can visit sarahpinborough.com. Yeah. But social media, where should people check you out?
Well, my Twitter handle is the very, very confusing @Sarah Pinborough.
Can you run that by us one more time?
@Sarah Pinborough.
Okay.
Just all one word. And Instagram, Sarah Pinborough Book. But yeah, Twitter is my main thing.
Before we go, we'll see what we can do for you. If one day Walter White...
make me a bestseller, that would be great.
I will try that. But
work on that.
I was going to suggest as well, if you do end up ever going home and you see Walter White sitting on top of your dishwasher, you know who to thank, okay? Just saying.
Thanks, guys. That would be awesome.
So it's goodbye from Mark 1.
And goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye!
Are you ready to transform your writing and your life? Join the 200-word challenge today. In just 5 days, learn to develop a lifelong writing habit with over 2 hours of free expert coaching and the encouragement of a vibrant community. This program has already changed the lives of thousands of writers like you. No matter how busy you are, this challenge will show you that with just 200 words a day, you can significantly boost your creativity, productivity, mental health, and confidence, propelling you towards the end. For the first time, receive comprehensive coaching and step-by-step guidance, all for free. Transform your writing habit and start your journey to become the writer you've always aspired to be. What are you waiting for? Sign up for free now at 200wordchallenge.com and make writing a part of your daily life for life.
To read Back to Reality, the best-selling novel of the Bestseller Experiment by the two Marks, go to bestsellerexperiment.com/Back to Reality.
And subscribe to this podcast to get loads of extra bonuses. Go to bestsellerexperiment.com/subscribe. What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book? Quitting the day job? Becoming a best-selling author? Since 2016, we've interviewed and studied the advice of over 500 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 1 billion books. And in the Bestseller Academy, we've incorporated powerful and proven strategies for success, inspiring fiction and non-fiction authors just like you to reach new heights and write their best book ever. Ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, coaching, and the most inspiring and exclusive community of like-minded writers? Well, your bestseller dreams are just a click away. Join us today at bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy.